Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we all know now, presided over his first meeting as the chair of the United Nations Security Council. India is for now the chair. It happens by rotation. It's India's turn now. And he presided over, the Prime Minister, the UN Security Council meeting on maritime security and cooperation. And he gave out his 5 points for enhancing it. So those 5 points you read, although I must say that when I read 5 points, it reminds me of Panchsheel and all the bad experience with that. And I wish we would talk of 4 points or 6 points or 7 points. Nevertheless, because China lies in the backdrop of all this discussion and our episode of Cut the Clutter today as well. Now, what is news? News is what you see in the headlines, what comes out. So the news is the Prime Minister presided over this meeting. He gave out his 5 points. The story lies behind the news. And under the story then lies the clutter, which is why I am here. Because what is happening? This meeting, maritime security. What is Indo-Pacific? What is the Quad? What is the Indo-Pacific Alliance called? The Quad. It is about maritime security and cooperation in this larger region, which is the threat that India sees and all the members of the Quad see and a lot of countries in the world see. That is China. So that is the story behind the headline news that you see. The clutter behind that is that how do we go forward on this? Because one of the elements of the clutter now is that international security, global politics, power politics, balance of power, global strategic issues are determined by trade even more than by military denominators now, because the chances that the two big countries will fight a real hot war are very, very, very low. We know that India and China had a skirmish last year, but it does look like on both sides things had gone out of control. It was local, at least that is how both sides dealt with it, and they got done with it. And since then, both sides have made sure no such thing happens, and that's why this disengagement is happening. As we speak, Gogra has happened just now, and maybe next would be Hot Springs, because both sides do not want a hot conflict situation. So in today's world, big powers or sizable powers or countries that have a stake, they do not want a hot war. But the Cold War also now has changed its direction and definition, and trade has now become the dominant aspect of the new Cold War or the new Cold Peace, as some people prefer to call it. And this is now very important for all the countries in the region, around China, and in the world. Because how does China exercise its power over the world? It is not because of the mega tonnage of its nuclear weapons. It's not because it's churning out warships faster than any country in the world. All that matters. But essentially, it draws its power from its domination of trade, its humongous trade surplus, its humongous foreign exchange reserves, its ability to play financial markets, but most importantly, because of the way the rest of the world has become dependent for its supply chains on Chinese manufacturers. So anytime the Chinese want, they can squeeze somebody. Anytime something goes wrong with China, everybody gets into trouble. And that is the one thing that everybody is addressing. And for China, it's very important to keep the trade domination, because that is what gives them the resources and the heft and the ability and the reach to also implement their other political, ideological, and strategic agenda. So trade is the thing. Now, what do we have? We have sort of serendipitously 2 articles written by 2 rivals in Australian politics. 2 rivals who also happen to be former prime ministers of Australia. So there is Tony Abbott, who was a prime minister of the right and who's currently been appointed as a special envoy to India by Morrison, the current prime minister of Australia. He's also special envoy to UK. He's just been to London as well, and he's just finished his visit to India. He is a leader of the right. Now, Australia is a strange country or unusual country where party of the right is the Liberal Party. But you know, this is Australia, it's down under. हमारी सर्दी में गर्मी, गर्मी में सर्दी, right? What summer is winter, what summer for us is winter there, what's winter for us is summer there. So I'm joking. But Liberal Party in Australia is the Conservative Party, the right-wing party. So Tony Abbott wrote an article in The Australian, that is Murdoch's newspaper in Australia. Tony Abbott actually in the past has had an avatar as a journalist and a columnist for the Australian also, besides the Bulletin. Then he came into politics. Then Kevin Rudd, on the other side of the political spectrum, who's been Prime Minister before Tony Abbott. Now, Kevin Rudd has been a skeptic of Quad. In fact, when he was Prime Minister the last time, he pretty much contributed to, he was played a pivotal role in pulling Australia out of the Quad because he did not want to annoy the Chinese. And he's so far been critical of the Quad or skeptical about the Quad. Now, he's written also an article, a sizable article, in Foreign Affairs, the respected, brought out by the respected think tank Council on Foreign Relations in America. And there he's written, in fact, this time in praise of the Quad. So this is a big turnaround. So both these former Prime Ministers of Australia, one from the right, Tony Abbott, one from the left, the Labour Party, that is Kevin Rudd, both have made a turnaround from their earlier positions and done some kind of mea culpa. Tony Abbott says it clearly in his article, and I will share both the articles with you, because in his article he says that, look, I know that the Western world thought, or the democratic world thought, that by getting China into the mainstream, they will get China to soften its politics, its ideology, to become more liberal and to become a more pacifist force. But that has not happened, and he said, I realized that I was wrong on these expectations to have signed my trade deal with China in 2014 as Prime Minister. And he mentions in this article that that was the first trade deal any member of the G20 signed with China. So to that extent, it was a big deal for China in terms of it being accepted in the global trading system. Kevin Rudd, on the other hand, says that, look, in the past, there was no sex appeal to the Quad. And in fact, after Abe, his first successor, more or less forgot it, and then it was dead in the water. And then various things happened. He also mentions that in 2007, Australia withdrew from it. He, as Prime Minister, he took over shortly thereafter. It was his party's government at that point. Julia Gillard was his party as well. And he was completely opposed to the idea. It was like a joke for him. It was like a club. But he also now says this idea has juice, it has sex appeal, and he also explains why. So I will talk about their arguments in a minute, but I will tell you where India is positioned, say, on the trade issue with China. Now, last year in 2020, particularly after the clash in Galwan, India made this big noise about discouraging imports from China. And then, like delivering a flea bite, we banned TikTok and a couple of other things. Now, banning TikTok is no big injury to China. What it does is it sort of cuts into the imagination of a lot of Indians, particularly a lot of working class, not very well-to-do Indians who were using TikTok. So because they feel, I'm not saying it harms them, but they feel कि हाँ मेरी सरकार ने कुछ तो चीनियों को किया. ये TikTok था, उसको इधर बंद कर दिया. By the way, at this point even Pakistan has banned TikTok, but that is for other reasons, for reasons of conservatism. Nevertheless, India banned TikTok, some other Chinese apps, and the idea was that India was now going to discourage imports from China. Also, India raised import tariffs on many things. So first of all, before we go into the arguments and what these two former Prime Ministers of Australia are saying and what they are pointing to and how we see it in the perspective of the Prime Minister's speech, our Prime Minister's speech also. Today, let me tell you the trade situation between India and China. Now we have data available for the first 6 months of 2021. And there is a story by my colleague Ramya Nair, which I am sharing with you. I'll share a link with you. Please read that story. I'm also showing you a couple of graphics on my screen. So please see those screens. See what's happened between India and India-China trade. We thought we were going to reduce imports from China. and either produce at home or import from other countries, countries that are friendly to us, that are not killing our soldiers on the borders, or that they are not intruding or threatening to intrude into our territory. So far, so good. Good idea, good intention. But what has happened in real life? In real life, the picture is very different, as these graphics will tell you, and some data I will read out. So compared to first 6 months, first 2 quarters of 2020, we just finished the first 2 quarters of this year in June. Compared to that, India's imports from China have risen by 67%. That's also because economies are opening up. 67 means by two-thirds, India's imports have risen. India's exports have also risen by 65%. So you might think, oh, this is fine, fair enough. Your imports have gone up 67%. Your exports have gone up 65%. So even Stevens, but no. So back to my old lecture, my old mantra. Please don't confuse absolutes with percentages. At 65% export growth is on the base of $9 billion. India's exports to China last year in the first 6 months were $9 billion. This time it is $15 billion. So you can say it's up fantastic. It's up 65%, but from $9 billion. India's imports, on the other hand, are up 67%, about the same as 65, but from a base of $26 billion to $43 billion. That's where absolutes change the picture of percentages. So if you look at total figures, last year in the first 6 months, India's imports were 26 billion. India's exports were 9 billion to China. So India's deficit, as you can calculate, was 26 minus 9, that is $17 billion. Today, in these first 6 months, when India's imports are 43 billion and India's exports are 15 billion, deficit has gone up to $28 billion. So while export-import percentage is about the same, India's trade deficit with China has gone up from $17 billion to $28 billion. And chances are, if this pattern is followed in the rest of the year, then India would be back to its usual ballpark of 60, 65, $70 billion of trade deficit. So the TikTok is not even a flea bite on the Chinese. That tells you how dominant the Chinese are in the global trade system, that India, trying so hard to break away from it, is not able to do it. And this despite the fact that China is India's second largest export market, and India's exports have been going up as they've gone up to China in this case, you can see. But China is India's second largest export market. America is the largest, but with America we enjoy a trade surplus, not with China. It's a humongous deficit. If we end up with another 60 billion or $60 billion plus this year, the Chinese will be quite happy to carry on like this. We've been able to cause no harm to them at all. If the idea was to make them pay for their sort of batamizi on the line of actual control, we've not been able to do anything about it. Now, if you look at percentages to percentages comparison in terms of what is in India's entire import basket, where does China feature? So again, see this graphic, figures are quite telling. In 2014-15, when Modi government came in, China contributed 13.5% of India's total import basket. That is about one out of every $7.5 worth of imports into India came from China, and the rest from the rest of the world, right? 15-16, it had already gone up, and that's when the Xi-Modi friendship is going on, and the Jhulas and the summits. 15-16, it's gone up to 16.2%. This is all percentages, no absolutes now. This is percentage of India's entire import basket. If import basket is 100, imports from China have gone up from 13.5% to 16.2%. It's a large increase. 16-17, again the same, 16%. 17-18, again go up, 16.4%, even further. 18-19, they come down. And we don't know why they came down, but 18-19 they came down. But it's also possible that 18-19 India's economy went on a downturn because 17 was demonetization, and after that India's economy went on a downturn, has not recovered since then as yet. Hopefully this year it will recover on a lower base. But 18-19, India had China's share in India's import basket was back to 13% range, 13.7. It was 13.5 in 14-15. But 1920, again it remained at the same place, which means also because India's economy was not just stalling, but India's economic growth has really fallen out of the barrel. It was really declining at a rapid rate. So once again, imports from China was 13.7% of the entire Indian basket. Because, it's not chappals and murti of Ganeshjis and Rakhis that contribute. They look very visible, but they don't contribute real weight to our import basket from China. The real weight is machinery, electronics, telephones, telecom equipment. I will give you a listing in just a while. 2021, it shot up back to its peak, in fact, a little over its peak. The peak we had seen so far was 16.4%. 2021, in spite of India wanting to curb imports from China, it went up to 16.6%. And this year, in the first 6 months, already it's 16.2%. Again, you see, what does India sell to China and what does India buy from China? See these tables. So India sells really low tech, low quality manufacture, mass goods or raw materials. The biggest thing that India sells to China is unfortunately iron ore. India should be making steel from it and selling it in India and elsewhere. So the biggest single item, if you look at India's sort of $15 billion worth of exports in these 6 months, the biggest single item, 2.48 billion, is iron ore. Then petroleum products, 0.52. All the others are chut items. Organic chemicals, half a billion. Spices, half a billion, 0.49 actually. Marine products, shrimp, etc., 0.4 billion. Iron and steel, that is finished goods, at least, if nothing else, at least rods or whatever, or strips in whatever form steel is made and sold, not manufactured products, not complex manufacture. These are 0.4 billion, actually 0.39 billion. And then you have some faltu things going ahead, residual chemicals and all that. All that is very small quantities. That is India's export basket to China. See India's import basket from China and mark this carefully and see the graphic also. The top 9 items I'm listing, I just listed India's top 9 export items. Now I'm listing top 9 import items. Number 1, electronic components, 3.5 billion, right? India's iron ore highest is 2.48 billion. This is electronic components without which this camera will not work, without which my phone will not work, without which any of the so-called made in India phones that you buy, whether it's from any of the Chinese origin or Chinese based manufacturers, nothing will work without. This is the largest piece in the Chinese basket of exports to India or India's exports from China. $3.5 billion electronic components, $2.6 billion telecom instruments, right? Think. And then think how this is almost like China is a colonial power and we are a colony, because colony sends raw materials and colonial ruler sends manufactured goods. That's why Gandhi said, we are khadi. Computer hardware, 2.5 billion. China sells computer hardware worth more to India than India's largest export, that is cheap iron ore, raw material. Organic chemicals, 2.1 billion. Industrial machinery for dairy, etc., $2.1 billion. Electronic instruments, 1.3 billion. And then you have chemicals and once again electronic machinery, $1.2 billion. In fact, if you just add up all the stuff around electronics, that itself will come to nearly 1.5 times of all of India's exports to China. So that is the imbalance that now exists between us and China. Now, you might think that I have digressed talking about Modi's speech today to the UN Security Council on maritime security and cooperation, and then the articles by the two former Australian prime ministers doing their mea culpas and saying we were wrong, thinking that China, that are reaching out to China and bringing them in the trading system will improve their conduct, their behavior. It has not happened from left and right. I'm not digressing. I'm just giving this data to you to set up the basic argument and the basic facts that they see under this clutter as we lift this cloud over this. So what is it that Tony Abbott is saying? Tony Abbott's mission to India was to finalize an India-Australia trade deal. Because Tony Abbott writes in his article that, look, recent studies have shown that the world is critically dependent on China, Chinese supply chains, on many things. In fact, a study has shown that for 86 particular products, crucial products, the world is dependent on China. And he says time has now come to change this to whatever extent possible. And he writes that conclusion of a trade deal between Australia and India would signal the democratic world's, quote unquote, the democratic world's tilt away from China. So he sees a trade deal between India and Australia as a political message to the rest of the world, and China, the democratic world, is not tilting away from China. Then he says he placed, in fact, Australian relations with India and Japan and Beijing at the heart of the escalating context, escalating global context to shape the new world order. In his article, and based on his article is also a story on the front page of the Australian by Dennis Shanahan, which also I'm sharing with you, and which also I'm quoting from. Then he says that India now should find its rightful place in the world order. It says China exploited the West's goodwill and wishful thinking to steal our technology and undercut our industry. And that is when he goes on to say that he now admits that he was wrong to have signed that 2014 trade deal with China. He says he should not have done it. And as he's saying that, in Australia, again, pick up the signals where they're coming from. In Australia, Labour, which normally would have been opposed to this tough action against China, what Labour has done is they have invited Labour to address Labour MPs, Japan's ambassador to Australia, who's very proactive. So Shingo Yamagami, the Japanese ambassador to Australia, is going to be talking to Australian MPs, particularly Labour MPs, also evangelizing his idea and his country's idea and the importance of Quad, etc., and how Japan wants closer relations with Australia, India, US, etc. Now, I told you that Tony Abbott has just been to Britain as well, and once again, even he places those talks also in the same context of fighting Chinese trade domination. Again, writing in the same article, he says, Australian foreign policy had wrongly assumed that increased trade would lead to increase in freedoms and liberalization in China. And he said, pandemic has exposed our dependence on China and its critical supply chains. And he says China's power is a consequence of the free world's decision to invite a communist dictatorship into global trading network. Very strong words. He is the envoy of the reigning prime minister. He's not just an opposition politician shooting his mouth off. So he's calculating his words. And he says, certainly, my view in 2014 that when I signed China's first trade deal with the G20 economy was wrong. I thought China will change, but China is now capriciously acted against imports from Australia on coal, barley, wine, seafood, etc., meat. And that shows that for China, trade is politics by another name. So it's important that trade deals today are as much about politics as economics, and that's why a swift deal like the Indian-Australian deal between like-minded democracies will be a big message to China. And then he goes on to say that if trade deal is done, then Australia could also fulfill some of India's needs, for which India may be dependent on China to some extent. And he lists many things, including rare earths and strategic minerals. Of course, he objects to the fact that India places 150% duty on Australian wines. Australia is a big wine producing country, and China stopping to import from Australia has been a big setback for that country. So again, the message to India is that if trade is a part of a key element of politics, diplomacy, and strategic policy, then do favors to your friends instead of to your adversaries. Now, Kevin Rudd, on the other hand, who dropped Australia from Quad, he has written an article in Foreign Affairs where he says, why is China, which was so dismissive of Quad, China, in fact, Wang Yi, he mentions in his article earlier in 2017, he said, what is Quad? It's like foam in the Pacific, right? A lot of foam rises in the Pacific. It dissipates in no time. This will also dissipate. He says now Chinese are not doing it. First, they try to be dismissive, so they try to ignore it. Then they try to split the Quad. First they said, dismissively, ignore the Quad. Then they said, no, split the Quad. So they reached out to, say, Australia at one level, Japan at another level. They also, according to him, reached out to India by arriving at a truce in eastern Ladakh, by de-escalating, by disengaging, by basically calming things down at Galwan and Pangong and now at Gogra. But they found that the hurt and resentment they had caused in these countries were by now too deep. So once they realized that neither ignoring the Quad worked nor splitting the Quad worked, they are now back to their third approach, which is just full-scale political attack on the Quad. And then he goes on to explain why the Quad is such a problem for China. And he says, and I'm quoting him, for the first time, the Quad meeting produced a unified communique committing to promote a free, open, rules-based order rooted in international law to defend democratic values and territorial integrity. That is what Kevin Rudd wrote. Now, Kevin Rudd had a very different view. He, if anything, is a great friend of China. He knows Mandarin language like a Chinese. He even has a Chinese name. In fact, he featured on my Walk the Talk in 2015, and we even bet a case of beer on India, on whether India will win or Australia in that year's World Cup being played in Australia. Unfortunately, Australia won, and I must say, I must acknowledge that he hasn't yet called me to deliver his case of beer to him. Nevertheless, he has a Chinese name, Lu Qin, and he was seen to be soft on China. But he now goes on to say he's praising the Quad, which is a big deal and shows you big change. And he says in his article, and I quote, the Quad is uniquely problematic for Chinese strategy because its aim is to unify a multilateral coalition of resistance, and that has the potential to stiffen spines across the whole of Indo-Pacific and possibly beyond. And then he goes on to say, these are long quotes, but I'm giving them to you and you will read them on my screen. Again, quote, for President Xi, the critical question is whether the Quad will evolve to be a large, coherent, and comprehensive enough body to effectively balance against China and thereby undermining any sense that China's dominance in Asia or globally is inevitable. So that is where you see these two prime ministers and you see these views coming out, and that is where you can see the world now positioning trade in the heart of strategic issues. And that's why, in conclusion, my one-line opinion, like our 50-word edits, India has to be more open-hearted and more open-minded by trade. India cannot have this stick-in-the-mud approach of being protectionist all the time. Somehow, this is 1960s, 1970s thinking, imports are bad, exports are good. India has to grow out of that because remember now, trade is a strategic instrument.